I didn't set out to start a family civil war with one sentence. But when my cousin leaned in at my sister's reception and whispered, "This is crazy expensive for this," the words slipped out of me like a dropped fork on tile. "Yeah," I said, not hushed at all. "It's a financial disaster." Silence. You could hear the DJ not playing because he wasn't there yet. My sister Lisa froze mid-smile like a wax figure. And her new husband, Mark, went the color of a stop sign. My mother blinked 3 times like she was rewinding the moment. My dad looked away, wounded and worried. My little brother snorted into his napkin, which would have been funnier if half the guests weren't standing because half the chairs were missing. Let me back up. I'm 28. Lisa is 32. Mark is the kind of guy who points at himself with his thumbs when he talks and somehow expects applause. The wedding was last weekend at a banquet hall that smelled like lemon cleaner and ambition. The flowers were gorgeous. The dessert table looked like it had its own Pinterest board. And the favors were one Hershey's Kiss taped to a card. I'm not exaggerating. One. Like a ration. The cake vanished 10 minutes into cutting, like it had somewhere else to be. The DJ showed up 45 minutes late, which is also how long it took for people to realize there weren't enough chairs. This wasn't a standing cocktail hour. This was dinner. Older guests were leaning on pillars. Cousins were swapping seats between bites. And an aunt brought in folding chairs from her trunk, like she was running a pop-up church. At first, I tried to swallow the commentary. Weddings are stressful. Logistics go wrong. But pressure kept building. Mark took the mic to welcome everyone and called the venue our palace, while the bar line coiled like an airport queue and the caterer whispered with his staff, equal parts confused and resigned. When my cousin murmured that expensive line, I didn't whisper back. I was honest out loud. It was one sentence, but it landed like a plate. Lisa's eyes flashed. Mark gripped the mic like it offended him personally. My mother cut me a look that said, "Not tonight." My dad gave me the "we'll talk later" nod, and Aunt said, "Wow, rude." Grandma texted me from across the room, "Heartless." Yes, in all caps. I shut up after that. I clapped for the first dance. I smiled for photos. I joked with people about the late DJ when he finally showed. But a word said in a quiet room keeps echoing. By the time the night ended, I could feel the temperature around me had dropped 10 degrees. The next morning, my phone lit up like a slot machine. Family group chat, ding, ding, ding. Mom asked if I had anything I wanted to say to my sister. Aunt chimed in about manners. My cousin, now my accidental ally, texted privately, "You're insane, but not wrong." Mark reacted to my messages with a thumbs down emoji, like he was grading a term paper. Lisa didn't say a word. She rage quit the group chat. Twice. Then Monday hit, and the other shoe fell from the floral arch. I learned my parents gave Lisa $10,000 to help with the wedding. Half of it, it turns out, went to the honeymoon. Bora bora. The chairs, the extra cake, the DJ's punctuality bonus that clearly never existed. Those were afterthoughts. My dad didn't know about the reallocation until Monday. He went quiet in a way that made me wish he'd yelled. My mom knew and didn't tell him I didn't want to fight before the wedding. And now they were having the fight after the wedding, with interest. I wanted to feel vindicated. I really did. But all I felt was tired. Because the truth didn't tidy anything. It didn't bring chairs back or give the DJ a time machine. It just widened the crack between people who love each other. By Tuesday, the cousin faction had split. Some were in the "you were right, but read the room" camp. Others were on team "don't talk about money ever." My little brother DM'd me, "I agree with you, but I don't want to get roasted." An uncle said I ruined the vibe. Grandma texted again, "Apologize." Then, today, her use of periods made it feel like a court order. I thought about it. I even typed out, "Lisa, I'm sorry I embarrassed you. I stared at that line long enough to memorize every pixel, but I couldn't hit send. It felt like apologizing for the fire alarm instead of the smoke. Wednesday evening, my dad called. Not a text, a call. His voice had that careful calm you get when the boat is already taking on water, and you don't want to make a wave. Come over, he said. Please. I drove to my parents' house. That familiar beige split level where the walls know our names. Mom was at the table with a stack of envelopes, receipts peeking out like tongues. Dad had a yellow legal pad and a pen. In that moment, I realized the wedding hadn't ended. It had just moved locations. Mom spoke first. You humiliated your sister. I know, I said. I shouldn't have said it out loud. But what? She said. And it was the kind of what that already knew the answer. Dad put a hand up. Let's stick to facts. The facts were messy. The wedding planner had invoiced an extra $4,000 labeled overages. Overages for what exactly was unclear. The dessert table was a separate vendor. The chairs were the venue. The DJ had his own contract. Somewhere in there, the math had lost its shoes. Half the gift went to the honeymoon. Dad said, looking at Mom, did you authorize that? Mom's eyes flashed the same way Lisa's had. I didn't authorize anything. I just didn't stop it. Dad breathed in slow. That money was for the wedding. It was for their marriage. Mom said, soft but firm. Memories. Memories. Dad repeated, like the word had a bitter rind. We went round and round the way families do, looping back to the same corner. I admitted my delivery was awful. Mom said honesty without kindness is cruelty. I said kindness without honesty is pretending the ship isn't sinking. Then the door opened. Lisa walked in with Mark. Their faces were wedding photo perfect and battle ready. Lisa's mouth was a thin line. Mark had his thumbs hooked into his pockets like he owned the room. We're not staying long, Lisa said. I came for my mail. Sit, Dad said, not unkindly. Please. Lisa sat. Mark remained standing, a living exclamation point. I kept my eyes on my hands. I'm sorry for the way I said it. I began. I embarrassed you, and I'm sorry for that. Lisa's eyes shimmered, then cooled. You called my wedding a disaster. I called the finances a disaster, I said. Not your marriage. Not you. You said it in front of everyone. Mark snapped. You ruined our vibe. The vibe, Dad said, quiet, was already challenged. Mom squeezed his arm. It didn't change his sentence. We dug into details. How many chairs were ordered? Why the cake was smaller than the guest count. Why the DJ was late, his van broke down, he said. And the replacement gear took time. Why the favors were a single chocolate kiss. Lisa said she wanted to keep favors simple and elegant, which is one adjective I didn't argue. And then we got to the gift. Dad asked the question like he didn't want to know the answer. Did you use half the $10,000 for the honeymoon? Lisa swallowed. Yes. Why? Dad asked. Because we deserved it, Mark said. A once-in-a-lifetime trip. Dad stared at him a long time. Chairs are also once in a lifetime, on that day. Lisa's jaw tightened. I thought the venue had enough. I thought the planner, Dad repeated, tapping. The invoice is charging an extra $4,000. For what? Mark waved a hand. Extras. Lighting, logistics. It's the cost of doing business. Dad nodded slowly, stood up and left the room. He returned with a red accordion folder, the one he uses for taxes, and set it on the table like a quiet gavel. He took out copies of contracts, line items, emails printed with subject lines in bold. He is not a loud man, my father. He is a careful one. He straightened the papers with his hands, like smoothing air bubbles from a decal. Then he looked at all of us and said, in a voice that made the room stop moving, "We are going to find a way to get that money back. He opened the planner contract to a clause and slid it across the table, his finger underlining the words. I hadn't seen him look like that since he taught me to balance a checkbook. Mark finally sat down. Lisa's face went pale. And right there in that quiet kitchen, under the hum of the refrigerator, something shifted. This wasn't about a rude sentence anymore. It was about what we owed each other and what we were willing to pretend. Dad tapped the page again, starting with this. Dad's finger under the contract clause sat there like a lighthouse beam. Even Mark, who could talk over a marching band, went quiet. The clause was simple itemized services, documented changes, written approval for overages, $4,000 for extras needed a paper trail. No paper, no extra. Lisa looked at me like I was enjoying this. I wasn't. I didn't want to win, I wanted a way out. Dad cleared his throat and asked for the planner's number. Mom, cheeks tight with secondhand embarrassment, handed him her phone. He put it on speaker. Hi, this is Tom, Lisa's father, he said in that courteous, immovable tone he uses with banks. We have a question about your final invoice. The planner sounded surprised, then composed. Of course. What can I clarify? These overages, Dad said. 4,000. Can you send the itemization? And any signed approvals? A pause. Some items were day of. Additions, upgraded lighting, extra staff, timeline adjustments. Approved by whom? Dad asked. In writing? Another pause. We spoke with the groom. Mark sat up straighter. Yeah, I told you to make it look good. Dad held up a palm. In writing? I don't have those in front of me, the planner said. I can email tomorrow. Please do, Dad said. If they're not documented, we'll need to adjust. He ended the call, then wrote a note on his legal pad, like he was etching a boundary into the table. Mark looked irritated, like rules were a personal accusation. Lisa looked smaller than her dress had made her. That night, the group chat woke back up. Not with fireworks, more like a long, low rumble. Aunt posted a photo from the reception of guests standing near empty tables. Cousin posted a screenshot of the cake plate. 10 minutes after the cut, crumbs like confetti. It wasn't cruelty, it was evidence. It didn't make anyone feel better. It did make everyone stop pretending. The next day, Dad got the email. Itemization attached. There were charges that made sense last minute. Linen swaps because of a spill. Extra bartender when the line surged. There were charges that didn't premium up lighting. No one remembered approving timeline management that read like we were late, so we stayed late. There was no signed approval from Lisa or Mom. A forwarded text from Mark said, do what you gotta do. Make it look sick. Dad called the planner again. He cited the clause politely. He suggested a revised invoice that removed anything without written approval. He was firm without threatening. The planner, hearing the measured insistence of a man who files things, agreed to revise. 2,000 removed. The rest stayed. In the family world, that's a win you can feel and not celebrate. Lisa sent a single text. Thanks, Dad. Mark sent nothing. Mom exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since the rehearsal dinner. Now it was my turn. I had apologized for the how, not the what. But a house isn't stable if only one wall is plumb. I drove to Lisa's apartment with coffee because coffee is neutral. Mark wasn't there. Lisa opened the door wearing the sweatshirt she'd worn in high school when we were both younger. And the worst thing we fought about was cereal. I'm not here to relitigate the wedding, I said. I'm here to own my part. She folded her arms. Okay, I was right about the money, I said. But I was wrong about the timing. I hurt you in public. You get to be mad at me for that. I'm sorry. She stared at the floor. Do you know why that hurt? Because it was true, I said. Because it felt like you were waiting to say it, she said. Like you wanted to knock me down a peg. I shook my head. I wasn't waiting. I slipped. That's worse, maybe. I didn't plan to hurt you. I just didn't stop myself. We sat with that. The way you sit with a cooling cup, you don't quite want to finish. She told me what I didn't know. The stress, the vendor shuffle. The way decisions piled up until spending on the trip felt like control. She told me what I did know: chairs were missing, people stood, and no amount of honeymoon suntans. The memory of Aunt Rose eating while standing. Dad's right about the contract, she said quietly. But I hate that it came to that. Me too, I said. But I love that he could help without yelling. We made a deal, an unglamorous, grown-up deal. She would send a thank you note to our parents that included a promise no more surprises with shared money. Mom would sit down with her to map a budget for anything big for the next year. Dad would be the reader of contracts, not the reactor. And I would not be the town crier at family events. There was one more thing. Mark. The thumbs downs, the shrug at approvals, the word vibe used as a shield. I don't pick my siblings' partners, but I do pick my boundaries. So what now? Lisa asked. Now, I said, we take a lap. A lap? A little distance. Fewer hot takes. Fewer group chats. More phone calls when it's important. I smiled. We try manageable distance. It's not a breakup. It's traffic control. She finally smiled back and it reached her eyes. Okay. When I left, I texted the family. Not a manifesto. Just I apologized to Lisa for the way I said it. Dad, thanks for helping with the invoice. Mom, I love you. I'll keep my commentary for private conversations. Cousin reacted with a heart. Grandma typed, good. Aunt typed, progress. Mark sent a thumbs up this time, which I chose to accept as detente. Dad sent the revised invoice with the new total and wrote, lesson learned. Put it in writing. Mom sent a calendar invite titled Coffee and Budgeting, which might be the least romantic phrase and the most useful one. A week later, Lisa called from the honeymoon. The ocean behind her was insulting in its beauty. She said, we're okay. Not perfect, not wrapped in a bow. Okay. I told her I'd save her a seat at the next family dinner. She laughed. Make sure there's enough chairs. I still think my sentence was true. But truth without timing is a bill with penalties. The fix wasn't pretending I was wrong. It was paying the fee for how I said it and making a plan, so we don't get charged again.